Welcome, everyone, to Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. We're your hosts and co-founders of FantasyForesight.com, coming to you from the Rambo Fixture Company studios. I'm Ben.
And I'm Jay.
You ready to get rolling, Jay?
You know it. Let's do this.
All right, let's go. Welcome in, everyone. It is Wednesday, July 29th. Shout out to my sister. Happy birthday, Em. We've got our guy Steve in the house with us at FF_encyclopedia. And tonight we are previewing the exciting quarterbacks and running backs of the AFC West. How you doing tonight, Jay?
Ben, I am great. It's been a drama-filled day in the NFL. Finally, this offseason has gotten interesting once again. I love it. Steve, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I will echo all of that, Jay. It has been an exciting day when it comes to NFL news. It's just nice to have sports news in general.
Exactly.
And definitely want to give a shout out to Amber. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much, sir. And in case it's your first time listening, what we're going to do is go in order of ADP according to 12-team PPR redraft ADPs at fantasyfootballcalculator.com as of yesterday. And we are going to go through in that order and discuss all of the relevant running backs and quarterbacks of the AFC West and all of our fantasy football finishes. All of those data that we speak in is weeks 1 through 16 in full PPR formats. So with all that said, first up, we have Las Vegas Raiders running back Josh Jacobs. He's currently going at the RB9 at the 111 behind Joe Mixon and Kenyon Drake and in front of Nick Chubb and Miles Sanders. The Raiders have the 22nd ranked strength of schedule at the running back position and the 11th ranked offensive line. He is the aggregate projected Josh Jacobs running back 13. And total Foresight, we are having a little bit of problems with the conversion from the Oakland to Las Vegas. So we will get a total Foresight rank on all Las Vegas players here soon. But everybody else is up to date. Everybody else is up to date. In 2019, he was running back 15 in fantasy points per game in his rookie season. He did miss 2 games, started 13 of 15 in your standard fantasy season. He had 242 attempts, 1,150 rush yards, 4.8 yards per carry, and 7 rushing touchdowns. Now, he added a Derrick Henry-like passing volume to his repertoire, having just 20 receptions on 27 targets for 166 yards, 8.3 yards per reception, so maybe they ought to think about going to that well a little bit more. Notable ranks in 2019, he was RB19 overall. He was 14th in RB1 percentage, 20th in RB2 percentage. Keep all this in mind compared to an RB9 price tag. 17th in consistency, 22nd in consistency from weeks 10 to 16, 22nd in Foresight consistency. Now, he did get some nice volume, 9th in rushing attempts, 7th in rush yards, 9th in rushing touchdowns, and he was 2nd in rushes greater than 20 yards. I thought that was very interesting. However, like I said, he was just 46th in running back targets and 47th in running back receiving yards. Some notable stats from Next Gen Stats and PlayerProfiler.com. He was just the 36th most efficient north-south runner. I found that to be interesting considering the type of offense that is, considering the quality of that offensive line. Just not what I would have associated with Josh Jacobs. And notable stats from PlayerProfiler.com. His best comp is Arian Foster, which I found pretty interesting. He was 11th in red zone touches, 3rd in big runs, 11th in big run rate, 8th in evaded tackles, 6th in juke rate, 9th in created yards, and 10th in created yards per touch. Those are all great stats, but I'm sorry. John Gruden, Derek Carr, and this Raiders offense just doesn't excite me. Jacobs had an amazing rookie season as a pure runner. But number one, the durability concerns that we mentioned heading into the season showed up in the way of 2 missed games, and the Raiders re-signed Jalen Richard. As a whole, this offense targeted 3 total running backs last year, a mere 74 times. Jalen Richard had 41, Jacobs had 27, like I said, and 1 other running back had 6. There's just zero passing upside in this offense. And I am sorry, at this price tag, I am literally taking all 4 running backs going ahead and behind of Josh Jacobs in 2020.
Oh, come on, Benny. They're going to Vegas, baby. Pretty exciting. But, yeah, you make a lot of good points. And I am blown away by did I read that correctly? He's going at the 111?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So Josh Jacobs is a first-round pick. That is intriguing to me. Well, when I look at it, guys, I look at the Raiders last season. You're talking about a team that, was 24th in the NFL when it came to how many plays offensively they ran per game. So we're talking about a pretty slow-paced offense. And like you said, Ben, they don't throw the ball to the running backs, and they really don't throw the ball to Josh Jacobs. He had 2 red zone targets all season. And we know that's not going to go up, like you alluded to. They are bringing back Jalen Richard. They use a 3rd-round pick on Lynn Bowden Jr. out of UCLA, who is a dynamic pass catcher out of the backfield. So it's just like it's pretty cut and dry that his role is strictly a first and second down back who will, he will get the goal line work. But again, with this offense, who knows what that's going to actually equate to.
Guys, I think I can sum up Josh Jacobs pretty well with all the information that you guys just gave to the audience. And that is, heading into the season, coming off a big rookie season, there's excitement. He's a second-year player. You're thinking that the arrow's pointing up. He had 1,150 yards as a rookie, which is fantastic. And I was excited about Josh Jacobs, and he was a guy who was kind of on my radar. But then when you dive into the numbers, let's really take a look. Like Ben said, he was 9th in rushing attempts, 7th in rush yards, 9th in rushing touchdowns, 2nd in plays over 20 yards, in addition to the fact that he was 3rd in big plays, 8th in evaded tackles, 6th in juke rate, 9th in yards created. You would think that that would translate to a premier running back in the NFL. But what did it translate into? RB15 in points per game. RB19 overall. 14th in RB1 percentage. 20th in RB2 percentage. Just the consistency wasn't there. And my big concern now about Josh Jacobs is he took elite volume and wasn't able to translate that into fantasy production. And I'm just not sure he's going to get more. I think he got all the volume he could handle last year. So yeah. I think we possibly could have seen his ceiling. And like you said, he finished RB15 in points per game, RB19 overall, and his current price tag is RB9 in the first round, to Steve's point. So I'm just not seeing it. A locked and loaded, solid RB2, absolutely. Premier elite RB1, I don't think so.
No, Jay, on top of the good point you made about maybe seeing his ceiling as far as volume goes, I think when you talk about all his evaded tackles, all his created yards, all his jukes and big runs and things like that, I think he probably had his ceiling in making the most of those yards and being the most efficient he could be. And yet that was 4.8 yards per carry. Again, I love the talent of this guy, but it's just I think that this is probably his ceiling. You're absolutely right. In this offense, if they're not going to pass him the football, and you've got Jalen Richard and a new nice pass catching running back that they just drafted, I mean, I don't see where Josh Jacobs is all of a sudden on this explosive offense and going to compensate for a lack of passing production with a ton of touchdowns. He had 7 already.
Right. And I don't want to spend 10 minutes on this guy, but continue to harp on him. But, 8th in evaded tackles, 6th in juke rate. He doesn't get passing out of the backfield like we've said, and yet he translated that into the 36th most efficient north-south runner. If you're not going to be efficient running north-south and you're not getting catches out of the backfield, what are you doing? Which is also a conundrum why they don't pass to their running backs out of the backfield. Carr could use all the help he can get.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you alluded to, Ben, when you mentioned he legitimately has durability concerns. And to me, when I'm drafting a fancy football player in the first round, that's the last thing I want to have to worry about. He's never done it, and he's never done it collegiately. He's never done it as a pro. So it's just, like you said, I love the talent. I love the kid. Like I'm happy for the Raiders, but like as far as fantasy football is concerned, like count me out of that price.
Yeah, listen, Josh Jacobs, great football player at the appropriate price. Where he's going now just is not appropriate. Because right now, he's the first running back off the board in the AFC West. The second running back off the board is LA Chargers running back Austin Eckler, who is going as RB12 midway through the second round at the 204 mark, behind Nick Chubb and Miles Sanders, but in front of Aaron Jones and Todd Gurley. Right now, Austin Eckler has the Chargers have the 18th ranked strength of schedule for running backs, but the 30th ranked offensive line, interesting combination there, may not be as big of a deal for a pass-catching back, but we shall see. His current aggregate projection is RB12, right where he's being drafted. So he's being drafted really at his ceiling, at his projection. His total Foresight rank actually is a tick ahead right now at RB9. Let's take a look at his fantasy finishes. In 2017, he was RB59, and in 2018, he was RB29 as a complimentary piece for most of those seasons. In 2019, he got to be the man for a large part of the season, and he checked in at RB4 overall in points per game. Last season, he did not miss a game, unlike Melvin Gordon. He had 8 starts, 123 carries for 511 yards for an over 4-yard per carry average and 3 touchdowns. But let's face it, that's not really where he makes his bread and butter. He makes his bread and butter in the passing game. This is PPR land. He had 83 catches on 97 beautiful targets out of the backfield for 950 receiving yards for an 11.4 yards per catch rate and 8 more touchdowns for a total of 11 scores. Some notable ranks from last year. He was RB4 overall. He was 4th in consistency. 4th in consistency from weeks 10 to 16. 6th in Foresight consistency. 3rd in top 6 percentage. 3rd in top 6 percentage.
Yeah.
The best of the best. 5th in RB1 percentage. 4th in RB2 percentage. 2nd in running back receptions. 3rd in running back targets. And he was 1st in running back receiving yards. Tack onto that, he was 6th in running back yards per reception and 1st in running back receiving touchdowns. Those are some elite numbers for a guy who is going as RB12 right now. So, he was 4th and the most efficient north-south runner. We just talked about Josh Jacobs, who doesn't get balls out of the backfield, and he was 36th in north-south. Now we're talking about a guy who gets all kinds of catches out of the backfield and is the most efficient north-south runner. That's the best of both worlds. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. All right. Some more notable stats from Player Profiler. He was 1st in yards per touch, 12th in big run rate, 1st in production premium, 7th in dominator rating. All this with just the 18th ranked snap share and 33rd ranked opportunity share. Like, it's mind-boggling. It's crazy. Yeah. This is opening my eyes, Ben.
Yes, sir.
Melvin Gordon vacated 148 rush attempts and 48 targets. Whatever target regression expected for Eckler can be absolutely absorbed by Melvin Gordon's vacated volume and then some. In fact, the way Eckler performed in Melvin Gordon's absence is precisely why the Chargers felt comfortable letting Gordon walk and extending Eckler for 4 years. He's the guy in that offense and very fairly priced at RB12.
Man, all I want to say about this one, guys, is I'm happy that I get to be the encyclopedia between you two bookends when it comes to discussing. Yeah, you like what I did there. Between you guys discussing this one. I'm kind of in between on Eckler,
All right.
to be honest. I can see the allure. He should get. I mean, guys, he actually last season there was only one running back who had more red zone targets than Austin Eckler, and you could probably guess who that was. Man, Christian McCaffrey. He tied Christian McCaffrey in goal line targets. We know what his role is. He is the most talented running back on the roster. But, there is Joshua Kelly, there is Justin Jackson, and there is now Tyrod Taylor. So we just don't know how the offense is going to look. Now, if I'm faced with drafting Austin Eckler, if it's at the right price, all day long, I'll pull that trigger because we're talking about PPR here, right? It's going to be a valuable pick to some extent. Probably not as much as last year, but really we don't know. So with that being said, I'm just going to sit the ball down and walk away and let you guys go at it.
I don't think there's any going at it between Ben and I. We just talked about Josh Jacobs and all those numbers, and then comparing him to Austin Eckler, who's going behind him in drafts. What debate is there?
Yeah, you're right, Steve. I'm a big Austin Eckler guy. I'm not a big fan of Phillip Rivers at this stage in his career, so I don't think they're losing some amazing beast quarterback from last year. You look at his numbers, it was pretty bad over there. And I've always been a fan of Tyrod Taylor. And any quarterback that has any rushing chops, which is pretty much every quarterback more so than Phillip Rivers, is going to help his running backs and going to help their efficiency for a guy who's already first in yards per touch.
Hey, Phil, did you hear that shot Ben threw at you?
Yeah, he's fine. He doesn't care what I think. But, I just think that there is like almost no reason to question Austin Eckler, and yet people are because he's not a big name. They let Melvin Gordon walk. Melvin Gordon's numbers last year and every year, other than being a little injury prone at the end of seasons early on, he's been outstanding for them. But they saw what Austin Eckler could be in the 4 games that Melvin Gordon was absent. And people forget, they think that he was out for half the season or something. He only missed 4 games. Austin Eckler did this with 12 games of Melvin Gordon being present. And
I totally agree. I think the biggest concern is when it comes down to it, that Phillip Rivers is gone, and this is a team that was 6th in the NFL in pass rate, 4th in the NFL in red zone passing attempts, and the volume, because it is a Tyrod Taylor offense, and I have no idea in the world why. So their offensive coordinator is Shane Steichen. I did not know that until I was writing up this week's piece about this division, justifiably so, and this guy was the quarterback's coach of the Chargers for 4 years, got promoted. And I kind of feel like when Phillip Rivers is washed and he's throwing 20 interceptions, that's the only excuse you have is because you must be buddy-buddy with him to throw the ball that much when you have that talented. You guys think of the backfield they had last season. So I just feel like the passing volume will be dialed back. But like you did say, Ben, I feel like the efficiency and the quality of those pass attempts to Austin Eckler could definitely be improved because it was
between he and Melvin Gordon, there were like 145 running back targets. Okay. So at the very least, he's getting half of that total number in targets. And then if they do run the ball more, a lot more of those carries are going to Austin Eckler. And now he's got a quarterback that's going to help him be even more efficient. So I have no issue with Austin Eckler. That said, I love Nick Chubb. No question marks there, other than for me a little bit more so than most. Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb was a different performing running back in the second half of the year with Kareem Hunt present. We all love Miles Sanders this year. Jay really loves Aaron Jones, and we all love Todd Gurley. So, he's going around a very interesting group of running backs.
Yeah,
but if he slides a little bit, like I love his value all day, and I don't even mind it where he's going at RB12.
No, outside of Miles Sanders, he'd be my second guy off this list. But Steve, if it makes you feel any better, year, the Chargers do have the 30th ranked offensive line, so Tyrod's going to be under pressure, and he's going to be needing to get the ball out quick if he doesn't want to get hurt. And the only way to
talk
do that
more
is
about
to have
Aaron
a
Jones.
nice little safety blanket. No, we're not talking about Aaron Jones and his 30 touchdowns this year. Let's move on to some drama.
Yes, sir. I mean, everybody listening may or may not have heard the news, but Damian Williams has opted out of the 2020 NFL season. There was already reason to be excited about Kansas City Chiefs rookie running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, forget about it. RB15 at the 210, that is going to be a thing of the past very, very quickly. Now that there's no competition for all the carries in that high-octane offense, this guy is going to shoot. I will be very interested to see how high he goes in first rounds. He's going right now behind Aaron Jones and Todd Gurley, in front of James Conner and Leonard Fournette. Strength of schedule is low for the Kansas City Chiefs running backs, 30th ranked this year, but they do have the 12th ranked offensive line and the best quarterback of all time. His current Foresight aggregate projection is RB19, and Total Foresight likes the rookie currently is RB25. Again, without Damian Williams factored into that equation, it'll be very interesting to see where Total Foresight ends up ranking him. Now, you look at his 2-year career at LSU. In 2018, he had 146 rush attempts for 658 yards at a 4.5 yards per carry average, 7 touchdowns on the ground, and added 11 receptions for 96 yards and an 8.7 yard per reception average. Last season, they changed offenses and everything changed for that team. And CEH was a huge part of that. 215 rush attempts for over 1,400 rush yards, 6.6 yards per carry, and 16 rushing touchdowns. And he's not done. 55 receptions for another 453 yards at an 8.2 yard per reception average with another touchdown. He was Dane Brugler's rookie RB4, and he describes him as, quote, productive with the ball in his hands due to his blend of agility, power, and toughness, projecting as an any down player who can line up across the formation, end quote. Listen. This was Pat Mahomes' hand-picked selection at the end of the first round. And per the Kansas City Star, CEH and Mahomes have been working out together in the offseason to develop their timing and chemistry. CEH feels like Kansas City is the perfect situation for him and outright stated that he already feels comfortable in the Chiefs' offense. He was able to virtually work on his routes with Coach Andy Reid before coming to Kansas City. And in college, he had to learn multiple offenses in college under different offensive coordinators, so he should have no problem learning Andy Reid's complicated playbook. And I got to say, I mean, it's been just a couple hours to think about it, but man, I'm definitely taking him over Josh Jacobs at the RB9 right now. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely. And
but what about Aaron Jones, Steve? Are you going to take him over Aaron Jones?
Well, I think he's the 101. He's going to score 48 touchdowns.
Exactly.
But, you know, it's funny. That news broke. And it was funny for our listeners out there. We were texting a little bit about it before we got onto the podcast tonight. And I put in my notes coming into this, it was like nothing better than researching for hours and spending hours writing about a division and trying to break down their backfield just so you can find out. Thank you, COVID-19. Another thank you for all your greatness here in 2020.
Yeah.
That Damian Williams will not be playing this season, because that kind of clarifies things quite a bit for us, I feel. You know, we all know Kansas City, that starting running back position is certainly one of the most valuable ones in all of fantasy football, of course. And guys, they had 67 red zone opportunities as a running, you know, like as a running team as a whole. It was split up between 10 different players last season. You know, I feel like if there's a defined role, and I also should note that LaShawn McCoy led in goal line carries and red zone carries, and that's not a good sign for them last year. So, you know, if CEH is going to, I mean, who else is going to have that role at this point in time? If he's going to have it, so valuable in fantasy football. And Ben, you make a fantastic point. Give me all the CEH I can get over Josh Jacobs in the first round.
Absolutely. I'm with you guys. You know, it's the arrow is definitely pointing up. His price tag is going to skyrocket now. It's just a matter of where it lands, but I would imagine it's going to land right in that Josh Jacobs area in the RB9, maybe even ahead, mixing in with Joe Mixon and Kenyon Drake. And even then, probably like CEH a little bit over those guys. So really,
I can see it getting up to like RB5 or 6.
And
guys.
it could.
I really
very
can.
well
could. Yeah. I mean, it's the lone RB attached to Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like, I can't even really argue. You'd be paying for a ceiling. Don't get me wrong, but some people
but it could
feel
be a great
like that's
ceiling.
Worth it. Yeah.
You start getting that Kareem Hunt 2017 feel.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Let's move on to the first Denver Bronco off the list, Melvin Gordon. It's weird to say. Melvin Gordon is the third, let's see, is this third? Fourth running back off the list from the AFC West. He is currently being drafted as RB21 at the back end of the third round, going behind Le'Veon Bell, Chris Carson, and in front of Jonathan Taylor and Mark Ingram. Very interesting group. The strength of schedule for running backs on the Broncos is 13th this season, and their offensive line is ranked 14th. His Foresight aggregate projection is RB18, so a tick ahead of where he's currently being drafted, which would indicate some value. And his total Foresight rank is RB17, even a little bit ahead. His fantasy points per game over the last 3 seasons, in 2017 he finished as RB6. 2018, he finished as RB3. In 2019, he finished as RB19 in points per game. Now, last season, he did miss 4 games. He had a total of 148 attempts for 566 yards for a 3.8 yards per carry average and 7 touchdowns, which really helped him out. He did have 36 catches on 48 targets for 220 yards and 1 score. Last season, he was RB23 overall. He was 16th in consistency, 13th in consistency from weeks 10 to 16, so there was a little bit of improvement at the end of the season. He was 16th in Foresight consistency and 9th in rushing touchdowns. He was the 12th most efficient north-south runner, and according to PlayerProfiler.com, his best comparison is Matt Forte. Interesting. He was 9th in Dominator rating, and not on a single wait a minute.
Jay, this one's just for you, brother. Say it loud and say it proud.
He was not on a single 2019 injury report. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. All right. Per NFL Network's James Palmer, the quote, "The belief is that Melvin Gordon will be Denver's bell cow." Wow, easy for me to say. Bell cow, close quote. Let's see, where was I? In weeks 1 to 16, Lindsey and Royce combined for 336 rushes and 96 targets. Assuming Melvin realizes, say, 65% of that volume, he'd be looking at 218 rushes and 62 targets. With that volume, he has an outstanding chance of returning value on an RB21 price tag.
So, Jay, I just want to say I'm right there with you when it comes to that RB21 price tag. He absolutely can return on that. And, you know, when we talked about your guys' Scott Fishbowl drafts a few weeks back, you remember, Ben, I gave you a little bit of a hard time about Melvin Gordon. But when I start thinking about his possible productivity relative to draft price, you know, I do admittingly have to change my tune a little bit. When I start looking at all the goal line and red zone opportunity this team had last season, like you said, if Melvin Gordon can get 65% of that, it's there. And, you know, really quick peek behind the curtain for listeners. If you don't know already, I'm married. I got 2 kids, a house. Like I'm pretty busy. I do put a lot of time into fantasy football, but I do miss some things. And I don't know how, guys, but I totally missed the fact that Pat Shurmur was hired to be the OC this offseason. And And while
It
I
helps.
don't, well, yeah, and while I don't know to what degree he will get the reins of the offense, having a Vic Fangio, defensive minded head coach, I do know that that man has done wonders with offenses throughout his
Yep.
career as an
Yep.
OC. So the way I look at it, if Melvin Gordon, I don't care necessarily as much about the rushing volume and what his share will be in that
Right.
regard. But if they utilize him as a pass catcher out of the backfield in PPR, like that can be very valuable. And it can help open up that entire offense that, let's face it, really, really needs to be opened up.
Well, to your point about the passing volume, Steve, Philip Lindsay was third in drops last year.
Ooh,
So,
wow.
he doesn't have the best hands, and he's, I will be talking about him a little later in this episode. He was an
Oh, yeah, we will.
undrafted free agent, but he does not have the pedigree of Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon is an every
Sure.
down running back. Philip Lindsay is not an every down running back. I'm sorry. And you just got to follow the money. Like, they had a chance to re-sign Philip Lindsay. They're probably going to let him walk to free agency next year. And they brought in Melvin Gordon at the same time. Actions speak louder than words, and that tells you pretty much everything you need to know. It's all relative to price tag, and at RB21, I have signed up for Melvin Gordon all day, and I will continue to do so.
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys. I think Melvin Gordon is a great value, and he has been in drafts, and I love the fact that his price tag is staying stagnant right now. He's a great value because whenever he's been healthy, he's been an extremely dynamic and efficient fantasy scorer. It's just come the end of the season. But the beautiful thing is we have no idea what the season's going to look like. We may not even get to the end of the season. So if you need to rack up wins early in your league, why not ride Melvin Gordon as long as you can?
RB21, man.
Right.
Jay, that's why I made such a big deal about him not being on a single injury report. You can't say a word about it this season.
I know.
If he gets hurt, go ahead. But until he does, he proved his durability last year.
He did get to sit out, the first month of the season.
But he was probably hitting a lot of people very hard in that time frame. Shut your face. So next up, we had Kansas City running back Damian Williams. Like Steve said, it would have been nice before I spent all the time on my research for Damian if he would have let us know what he was doing. But, all kidding aside, he's just now a non-factor. He was going as RB31 at the 607 behind DeAndre Swift and Ronald Jones and in front of James White and J.K. Dobbins. All of a sudden, whatever positive equity propelled him to RB31 is going to get transferred to CEH and push his RB15 price tag through the roof, and with good reason. So, Jay, go ahead and move us on to Philip Lindsay.
All right, moving on to Philip Lindsay, the second Denver Bronco off the draft board at this point. Currently being drafted, we're jumping a little bit here, to RB43 in the middle of the 9th round. Now we're starting to get away from some of the top-end talent, your starting running backs. Now we're going for bench spots, flex spots, and value. Philip Lindsay is currently being drafted behind Matt Breida and Alexander Madison, but ahead of Latavius Murray and Kerryon Johnson. Like I mentioned, the Broncos running backs have the 13th best strength of schedule for the position this season and the 14th ranked offensive line. Philip Lindsay's current aggregate projection is RB38, so again, a tick ahead of where he's being drafted. In his Foresight projection, just like Melvin Gordon, is RB37. Again, just a step above his aggregate projection, and both are ahead of the price tag, which tells you there's some value there. In 2018, Philip Lindsay finished as RB13 in points per game. And in 2019, he finished as RB23 in points per game. Last season, did not miss a game, had 206 attempts for 958 rushing yards for a 4.7 yards per carry average and 7 touchdowns. He tacked on another 35 catches on 47 targets for a touch under 200 yards and a little under a 6 yard per reception average. Some notable stats from last season. He was RB18 overall. He was RB23 in consistency, RB28 in Foresight consistency, 16th in rush attempts, 14th in rushing yards, 6th in runs of greater than 20 yards, and 9th in rushing touchdowns. Again, some nice production that translated to RB 23 points per game and RB 18 overall. According to Next Gen Stats, he was the 19th most efficient north-south runner. And according to playerprofiler.com, he was 12th in big runs, 20th in big run rate, 20th in yards created, 17th in dominator rating. Jeez, it's tough for some people.
What are you drinking over there?
I don't know. It's good though. But like Ben had mentioned, 3rd most in drops. So for an undrafted free agent, you couldn't ask for a better start to a career posting back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. However, the combination of signing Melvin Gordon while simultaneously leaving Lindsey's contract situation unresolved and presumably allowing him to enter free agency at the end of this season tells you everything you need to know about how the Broncos view Philip Lindsay. And unfortunately for him, the view apparently is not one of a lead back in the NFL. And to finish this off before I hand it over to Steve, all of these great stats and numbers, he is going as RB 43. So I will tell you, we always bring it back to price.
And that's why I got my notes. The first thing I have written down here is my man. Because, guys, Philip Lindsay, I feel like he is just constantly disrespected. And we talked about, Ben, you brought up CEH is out there working with Mahomes in the offseason. Drew Lock has been organizing team workouts around various parks in Denver. And the running back who's been there trying to work on those hands that drops the ball, that is definitely Philip Lindsay. He's out there. He's bulked up in the offseason. And I just feel like, for me, this is a guy that's like, man, he is a dog. I mean, undrafted free agent, has done what he's done, and he feels the heat. Melvin Gordon's coming into town, and he's like, I got to bulk up. I have to – he's definitely coming out for a fight. He's not going to just give over that job. Now, it might not be his choice because, like you said, Ben, you got to follow money. Yep. But, man, oh, man. And I do want to say he didn't have a ton of goal line opportunity, but Philip Lindsay, he got 8 goal line totes, converted 5 of them, one of the higher conversion rates in the entire NFL. So for a little guy, I mean, there's just a lot of fight in that guy. I root for him. It's definitely going to be a very interesting situation there in Denver. But, man, like I said, Ben, my man.
Ben, before you go, contract year, man. This is something you always like. Contract year, a guy fighting for it.
My comments on Philip Lindsay earlier were isolated to the fact that some people are trying to fade Melvin Gordon because of Philip Lindsay, and I'm just not here to hear any of that. However, like you both astutely pointed out, he's going as RB 43, and I would like to point out that in my mind, he is the exact same as the very guy. He's in the exact same category as the very guys going right in front of him and right behind him. Alexander Mattison and Latavius Murray, like Philip Lindsay, have at times standalone value, but if the guy in front of him goes down, all of a sudden you're looking at a top shelf RB1. And that is exactly who Philip Lindsay is. And I have no problem if you want to lock up this entire backfield in your drafts with at the end of the 3rd and then the top of the 9th. I'm fine with that.
And I love what you said, Benny, because I hear you guys know I listen to pretty much everything while I'm running, and everyone, it's always Madison, Murray, Pollard, Madison, Murray, Pollard. Yep. And I'm like, well, can we not at least consider Philip Lindsay in the conversation?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It keeps his price low, Steve. It keeps his price low.
But we certainly should. I mean, he's going to have some standalone flexibility. Anyways, no one draft him. I'll take all the shares.
Exactly.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to a guy that I am almost as excited about as I am as Damian Williams, who has opted out of this season, is LA Chargers running back Justin Jackson. He's currently going as RB 53 appropriately, and at the 11:08 behind Boston Scott and Duke Johnson, and in front of AJ Dillon and Damian Harris. Like we said when we talked about the amazing Austin Eckler, the running backs for the Chargers have the 18th ranked strength of schedule at the running back position, and they have the 30th ranked offensive line. The aggregate projection for Justin Jackson is RB 49, so a little bit of, I guess you could call value versus that RB 53 price tag. Total Foresight is on my side. And now that it's all ratcheted up and accurate, I'm loving it. And I love that it agrees with me in its very intelligent state, calling Justin Jackson appropriately RB 60. His career fantasy finishes so far, points per game, reflect that as well. 2 years ago, RB 79 in points per game. Last year, RB 67 in points per game. He played in 6 games last year. He got 28 attempts, converted that to 189 yards. Really nice 6.8 yard per carry average. Added 9 receptions on 11 targets for just 22 yards and no touchdowns. Though it was just 28 attempts, he was second in yards per attempt. Very, very small sample size. And man, people want to get excited about this guy. Playerprofiler.com has a lot of great work. I really respect their information. I really expect their player comps. And Justin Jackson's player comp is Shane Vereen. That doesn't scare me, especially because Shane Vereen made a lot of his hay in the passing game, and they are not taking Austin Eckler out on any passing down ever. Here's the thing. Justin Jackson will be involved, but it would take an Austin Eckler injury to make him relevant whatsoever. And when you consider that he's going right behind Boston Scott and Duke Johnson, I'm definitely going in a different direction.
So I just want to say, guys, I know you guys do a fantastic job of touching on all of the relevant fantasy football players of every division. So it is because you guys do your job so well, we're going to talk about Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. You guys can just skip me on the next go around. I'm being dead serious. We will talk about the quarterbacks. I'm going to surmise my comments for both of these running backs so we can just glaze over me next time. So, fellas, here's where I come out with the whole thing is this. Would we all agree this won't be a very high scoring offense? It's just there's nothing that really does it for me for the Chargers backfield outside of Austin Eckler.
Right.
So I've been hearing people say, I'm going to draft both Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly to make sure I get that Melvin Gordon out of the backfield. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, we're talking about a 4th rounder, a 7th rounder, Melvin, like, come on, people. Don't waste your draft equity. Like, figure out who gets half of the non-pass catching, slow, not high scoring offense, and decide if you want to house that person on your bench. Don't waste draft picks on these guys. That's where I stand. I just want to get that little PSA out there. And like I said, I'll rejoin you guys when we start talking about Patrick Mahomes to start the quarterbacks of this division.
Fair enough.
Good. Thanks, Steve. Hey, I just want to jump into Joshua Kelly because to me, he's the more intriguing of the 2 running backs. We saw Justin Jackson. We know what he is. And at this point in drafts, you're looking back in a draft when you're looking at adding pieces to your bench. And, like Ben said, when Justin Jackson's up with the guys going around him, I'm going in a different direction at that point. And with Joshua Kelly, he's currently being drafted as RB 65 in the 14th round. For our league of record, that's the final round of the draft. So, if you're looking for a dart throw late, I would rather go with a rookie who has some upside potential. Use them as currency. They're always the flashy new toy and the next man up if there's an injury, and everybody always has these high expectations about these guys who flashed in college. So why not, if you want to take him at the end of the draft and stash him on your bench, and again, use him as currency in trades, why not? In 2 years at UCLA, in 2018, he had 225 attempts for over 1,200 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns, 27 catches for 193 yards and no score. 2019, he had 229 rushing attempts for 1,060 yards and 12 touchdowns. Guy's a touchdown machine. Only had 11 catches for 71 yards out of the backfield and 1 touchdown. According to playerprofiler.com, his best comp is Sony Michel. Interesting. Hopefully he can stay a little bit more healthy. And according to Dane Brugler, he's Dane Brugler's running back 7 and calls him, quote, a well-rounded back with the competitive drive that helps translate to football production, end quote. Listen, at RB65, like I said, we're talking about dart throw city. Josh Kelly's up against Justin Jackson for the second running back role in this offense. It's not a huge obstacle to return positive return on investment at RB65.
Steve, you said it best, not to draft either one of these guys, but if you are going to draft one of them, you go with A, the cheaper one, and B, the most recently drafted one.
Right.
And, I like Josh Kelly's, career at 2 years in UCLA. And like he's going pretty much free. He's going around Adrian Peterson, Jamal Williams, Jerick McKinnon. I mean, the only argument I could think of potentially making is maybe Jerick McKinnon. Otherwise, Joshua Kelly is probably a better roll of the dice than any of those other 3 guys.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Steve's good. All right.
Steve's all good. Let's
Enough
get
of
to
the running backs.
Yeah.
Let's go. Starting with the number 1 quarterback in your hearts and in fantasy football drafts, coming off the board at the QB1 spot. What's that, Lamar? QB1 spot. At the 204 mark, future Hall of Famer, this season, 50-50 club, Pat Mahomes. Let's call it. All right. The strength of schedule. Let's get into some of the stats. We'll just see how great he is. I can't wait. You guys just...
Yeah.
Take a drink, sit back, relax.
Enjoy yourself.
I know.
Yeah.
All right.
I took a deep breath.
Yep. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure my pants are on right now, but it's fine. Hands up here.
Try not to hyperventilate over
the quarterback strength of schedule for the Chiefs this week, like it matters, is 22nd. I don't even care about that. Their offensive line is ranked 12th. That's fine. I mean, he's got magic feet. His Foresight aggregate projection, QB2. Okay, I'll stomach it for now. His total Foresight rank is QB3. Listen, things are going to change. He's going to move up to QB2 there as well. It's fine. His fantasy points per game finishes over the last 2 seasons. In 2018, he was QB1. In 2019, with the all ridiculous injury, QB3 in points per game. Pretty nice ceiling, pretty nice floor, if you ask me. Again, he did miss 2 games last season. He had 3,800 passing yards, 66 completion percentage. It was fine. 25 touchdowns to 4 picks. Ho-hum for Mr. Mahomes, really. He did add a couple hundred yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. Let's try not to rush him too much in short yardage situations this season, though. Let's see, 2019, some notable stat ranks for you guys. QB8 overall, 3rd in fantasy points per game, 3rd in consistency, 3rd in consistency weeks 10 to 16, 5th in Foresight consistency, 2nd in QB1 consistency or QB1 percentage, just 16th in pass attempts, 7th in passing yards off those 16th in pass attempts, 5th in yards per attempt, 9th in passing touchdowns, 2nd in touchdown to interception ratio, 10th in touchdowns per attempt. And again, that's all having missed 2 games in a very down Pat Mahomes year, I think we can all agree. He was also 37th in aggressive throw percentage because you don't have to be that aggressive when you're Pat Mahomes, and you can throw the ball without looking. He was also 7th in passer rating. Some notable 2019 player profiler stats. He was 11th in deep ball attempts, 8th in money throws, 8th in true passer rating, 7th in true completion percentage, 3rd in deep ball percentage, 5th in pressured completion percentage, and 2nd in adjusted yards per attempt. What can you say? The QB1 of your heart has already been an MVP, already a Super Bowl champ, already a Super Bowl MVP. He signed a historic contract to become a Kansas City lifer in addition to, and now he's part owner of the Kansas City Royals. He's the only one who doesn't hate 2020 so far. In all seriousness, anyone who watches can tell he's obviously a generational talent, and he could not be in a better situation. They have as good of a shot as any recent Super Bowl champ to repeat this season, and if that happens, we could be staring down the barrel of the next NFL dynasty. And I, RVJ, am here for it. Woo!
So
down.
Before I talk about Patrick Mahomes and his season in 2019 in the red zone, I just want anyone listening to know, you see that picture right there in the background with Baker Mayfield? I wouldn't mind if that was Patrick Mahomes. So just keep that in mind when I say these numbers. I have nothing against the man. I'm jealous. I won a Super Bowl championship. I won an MVP quarterback. Anyways, so it's funny. I channeled my inner Ben when I was writing this week because I was like, check this out. One of your best phrases, like, check this out. So in 2018, Patrick Mahomes had 96 red zone pass attempts, which tied for first with Jared Goff. He completed 65.6% of those passes, which ranked fifth, which happened to be, obviously fifth, top echelon of the NFL. And he led the league in a landslide with 35 red zone touchdowns. 35 touchdowns might lead the entire NFL in touchdowns, period, as a quarterback. That's what he did in 2018. I'm here to say I think I've unlocked the difference between his 2018 and 2019 seasons, because his 2019 season, albeit in 2.5 less games, but still, he only had 56 red zone attempts, which ranked 24th. He only completed, guys, 51.8% of those, which was ranked for 24th in the NFL. I mean, we're getting down into that Mitch Trubisky range. Sorry, Jay, I hate to say it, but that's what happened. He also only threw for 11 touchdowns, which tied for 27th. So even if we extrapolate those numbers out to a full season where he doesn't miss 2.5 games, he's still in the bottom portion of the NFL in red zone passing. So I think, like, when we look at his 2018 season, his 2019 season, how big of a drop-off there was and how much of a disappointment it was for, all of us in the fantasy world who reached out and went for Mahomes last season. I think his red zone passing, literally exactly 24 less touchdowns, 50 to 26, 24 less is exactly what his red zone numbers were. So obviously coincidence, but he struggled mightily in the red zone. Now, we talked about it a little bit before we got on tonight, and I'm expecting you guys agree with me while we're here live on air, but I have to think that there's no way that happens. I feel like it was like one end of the pendulum, the other end. And worst case scenario, I think in 2020, we meet somewhere in between, and that will put Mahomes in that QB1 overall conversation.
You're absolutely right. I mean, all he needs to get to 32 total passing touchdowns is 2 touchdowns a game. I mean, that for Mahomes, he could do that with his eyes closed, probably literally. He's just Lamar Jackson. He was a prolific passer last year. He was largely supported by what he can do with his legs, and he has a generational talent as far as just elusiveness and just how smart he is as a runner in evading big punishment for his rushing production. But I think everybody feels like Pat Mahomes, his talent and his production and his performance are just far more sustainable. He is who he is, and he doesn't have to rely on a bunch of risky stuff to get it done. And I just think, it just says so much about how much that organization gets it, how much Pat Mahomes gets it, that they tie themselves to one another for the next decade. I mean, they just like, hey, anybody that wants to come and play with Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid, we're going to be here. It's just it's just a next level situation. We're looking at a type of talent that I don't think we've ever seen before. I'm not saying he's the most talented quarterback we've ever seen. I'm not saying he's the best quarterback we've ever seen, but we have never seen anything like Pat Mahomes before. And I'm very glad that, we are going to get to watch his entire career unfold. And, it's going to be fun to see him in 2020. I mean, we love Pat Mahomes of Fantasy Foresight. What can I say?
Pat Mahomes is like Lamar Jackson if Lamar Jackson could spin the rock, right?
Hey, Lamar Jackson had more passing touchdowns than Pat Mahomes last year, and it was by 9, brother.
Pat Mahomes hurts his knee trying to QB sneaks.
I'm gonna direct this to my boy. Pat Mahomes is the same as Mitch Trubisky, Steve over here.
Red zone passing.
That's all I heard was you think Pat Mahomes is Mitch Trubisky. All right, let me throw this stat at you. In the 7 games Pat Mahomes was healthy last season to start the season, he only threw under 300 yards twice. In the 7 games after the injury, he only threw over 300 yards twice. It was the tale of 2 seasons. When he wasn't
a dislocated kneecap will do that to you.
When he wasn't healthy, he was not the same guy. So I'm not worried about it. He had half a season really of true quarterback play last season. Other than that, he was hobbling around.
Well, hey, by the time they got to the AFC championship game, he was making 30-yard runs to win the thing.
Right.
So, I mean, or to seal it at least, whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, like you said, it's a tale of 2 seasons, and with him being fully healthy, look out, everyone.
Yeah. Yes, Steve.
Trubisky at the 208. Not
you can take Trubisky at the 208, and Jay can take Aaron Jones at the 101, and I'll laugh at everyone.
Being in all seriousness, guys, you can take Trubisky at the 208 of like your second draft after you've already drafted the entire rest of the NFL.
On that
it's probably
note,
still a little too high, Steve. You're reaching, bro.
It might be.
Kind of like how Pat Mahomes' red zone targets jumped off a cliff from 2018 to 2019. We're about to jump off a cliff in quarterback talent in this podcast.
But you know what? It's okay. I mean, any quarterback that you compare to Pat Mahomes is going to be that way. You stop it right now. We still have 3 interesting quarterbacks to round out this episode. And it starts with second-year quarterback for the Denver Broncos, Drew Lock. He's currently going as QB 20 at the 13-12 behind Joe Burrow and Jimmy G and in front of Jared Goff and Phillip Rivers. They have one of the worst strength of schedules at the quarterback position the Denver Broncos do. And Drew Lock benefits from the 14th ranked offensive line. Now, listen, he's QB 25 projection, QB 27 total Foresight rank. He was QB 19 in fantasy points per game. But check this out. In 5 rookie starts, he had a 4-1 record. I mean, that is not nothing. He had a 65% completion percentage, 6.6 yards per attempt for 843 yards. Only 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, added 43 yards on the ground. No big deal. Notable stat ranks. He was 14th in touchdowns per attempt. He was just 33rd in average intended air yards and just 30th in aggressive throw percentage. I expect that from a rookie. We'll see what he looks like and how he feels in his second year. I will say it does not bode well for him that playerprofiler.com lists his best comp as Brett Hundley. Yikes. However, it was 8th in red zone completion percentage, which, Steve, should get your attention a little bit. And Drew Lock played well in the limited time he saw last season. And this year, he has some pretty nice weapons to work with in Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, and Noah Fant. I think we can all agree on those 5. And while I'm not a fan of the head coach, Pat Shurmur, the OC, is very solid. At QB 20, he's totally free and a nice upside option in 2 QB leagues. In 1 QB leagues, I'm definitely not drafting him, but I am keeping a close eye on this guy the first couple of weeks of the season. I am.
Steve, let me go ahead and take this real quick. What was his record last year as a starter? 5-1?
4-1.
4-1. Fantastic. What did he turn that into? QB 30 in points per game.
As a first-time rookie starter, calm yourself down.
Okay. Steve, continue.
So
yeah,
I
it's
will
all relative
say,
to price tag. It's fine.
It's taken me a minute to get around to it, but hey, for anyone who is listening currently, go to fantasyforesight.com, go to the Foresight Encyclopedia tab, all the run, pass splits, pace of play, red zone targets, red zone goal line rushing, all that stuff. I have it broken down by division. You can check out the AFC West right now on the Foresight Encyclopedia tab on at fantasyforesight.com. So, yeah, when it comes to Drew Lock, Ben, you do make a lot of good points. Like when I looked at his red zone numbers, if you were to extrapolate it out for a full season, he would have actually been one of the top red zone passers, believe it or not, in the entire NFL. Now, a lot of that was kind of carried by, I believe they played Houston in week 16 or 17, and he had a monster game. But otherwise, Drew Lock, 4 out of 5 games, has had 208 yards less passing. So, as far as a fantasy option, I think we'd all agree you're not going to take him in the redraft, but in a 2-quarterback league, he is very interesting because, like you said, Ben, he's got weapons. And Pat Shurmur is now the offensive coordinator. He comes from that Andy Reid, like coaching tree where it's vertical passing with a little bit of that West Coast offense rooted into it. And there's the potential that Drew Lock can take a step, and he has all those weapons around him where he's someone, like you said, in all caps, I'm keeping a close eye. If you read what I wrote this week, same thing. I'm going to monitor Denver and see how he is doing in that offense, because he is somebody who, not just in 2-quarterback leagues, could provide value. He could be somebody that, for all of us late round quarterback guys that are streaming, he could be somebody that we might end up using or want to pick up. We see those dark horse quarterbacks year after year, and I don't know, guys. I mean, Drew Lock potentially could be that in 2020.
He's kind of like if Josh Allen couldn't run.
And all
Josh Allen has never thrown 65% completion in his life.
Like anywhere on the field. Not just the red zone, Jay, like anywhere. Not even in Pee Wee.
I feel like Drew Lock proves my point about taking Joshua Kelly at the end of the drafts. Everybody loves young, shiny new toys and players and like the unknown and the unexpected. So, take the running back, use him as currency. A quarterback, for me, it's a different story, man. I need to see it a little bit more.
Well, that's why we both said neither of us are drafting him in a single QB league.
Okay, but my point was going to be, I'm shocked that he's being drafted. I'm not shocked he's being drafted ahead of Tyrod Taylor. I understand that. But, Derek Carr gets crapped on a lot. I'm still surprised.
Well, he's going to get crapped on in this episode, too.
But I'm still surprised Drew Lock's being taken in front of him. Like, I don't know, man. I'm not.
It's because of the weapons, Jay. Look, what do you think of Cortland Sutton? Good receiver?
Yeah,
no.
Ben.
Jerry Jeudy, Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, Noah Fant. Man, like, he's got more weapons than most.
And OC Pat Shurmur is actually like my favorite part of that whole equation.
Jay, he was a rookie. He was serviceable and had nice red zone accuracy and then limited work. Coming in midway through the season is not an easy thing to do, to try and jump in on the fly.
Listen,
and he led him to 4
I don't want to hear it.
You know what? I agree with you there. But when you're talking about QB 20 and ADP and, looking at the respective situations of quarterbacks going that late, Drew Lock appears to be in as good of, if not a better than situation than the rest of them.
I have to completely Joe Burrow's going 2 quarterbacks ahead of him. The number 1 overall pick in the draft.
And he's going ahead of him, and we would all take Joe Burrow ahead of him.
Like 2 spots. It's not like he's going like 4 rounds ahead of him. Like, I mean, in this group, like, I don't know, man. I'm not a Drew Lock guy. I don't want any piece of that pie. I'm going to let somebody else take that dart throw.
And me and Steve are not going to be surprised if the kid takes a step this year, because he has such good weapons and such a nice offensive.
Taking a step, it's off the short bus.
He's going to be in my Yahoo League of Record watch list. Boom. And
Perfect.
no, because you guys did talk about in the same breath of sentences in that exchange, so I'm just going to like add a little more fuel to that fire. We're talking about Mahomes. We're talking about the cheaper price tag quarterbacks going with the Joe Burrows and whatnot. Guys, at the end of the day, yeah, we're not taking him like in redraft, but in a 2 quarterback league, fine. But he's going in the 13th round, and like Ben said, we'll keep our eye on Drew Lock and just see. I would not be surprised if Denver ends up being one of the more explosive, like fun to watch offenses in the entire NFL. I also won't be surprised if they just stink. But I will keep my eye on them because they're all the potential pieces to be in place for that to happen, for that explosion. They're at least there. Yep. So I don't know.
There's some smoke over there. We're going to find out if there's fire, and it's not going to take long to figure that out. Now, I will say that the next guy going completely for free, undrafted, is somebody that I would prefer over Drew Lock in week 1, and that is LA Chargers quarterback Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod and the Chargers have the 12th ranked strength of schedule for the quarterback position. Now, he does have the 30th ranked offensive line. He is projected as QB 29. His total Foresight projection is QB 29. I personally think it's a little bit low. He didn't play at all last season. He was QB 18 in fantasy points per game in 2017, QB 38 in fantasy points per game in 2018. I will say I was extremely surprised and, dare I say, shocked to find out that at playerprofiler.com, his best comp is Russell Wilson. I mean, just take that for what it's worth, but it's not Brett Hundley. Let's just put it that way. Today, just a little bit before we started rolling on this podcast, per at My Sports Update on Twitter, Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn told reporters what we all expected, that Tyrod Taylor is expected to be the day 1 starter. Now, listen to this. He did not play at all last year. And then prior to that, he was with the Browns in the early part of 2018, and then he was with the Bills in 2017. Did you know in Tyrod Taylor's last 6 starts, he was a fantasy QB1 3 of 6 times? In 2018 with the Browns, that was week 1. He was QB6. And then at the end of the season, weeks 15 and week 17 with the Bills, he was QB7 and QB9. In 2019, a 50% QB1 percentage would have tied with Matt Ryan for QB10 in that metric. And the Chargers opened with Cincy and their awful defense. And then Kansas City with a great game script because it's Pat Mahomes. He's going to score 1,000 points. And then they have week 3 versus Carolina Panthers. I've always been a Tyrod fan, but even if you haven't, take note. He's still a solid streamer option in 2020, especially for free.
Yeah, I'm definitely right there with you on that one, Benny. Like, what I wrote about this week, when you look at the LA Chargers offense and what they did, run versus pass, red zone, you kind of have to throw all that out the window because Phillip Rivers, it's been Drew Brees, guys, in 2005 was the last time the starting quarterback for the Chargers wasn't Phillip Rivers. It's a very long time.
Yeah.
So you have to pretty much throw everything out the window. And like you said, when it all comes down to it, he's probably going to give you a pretty safe rushing floor week to week. And at least in the early portion of 2020, if you're streaming quarterbacks, or especially if you're in a 2-quarterback league and you load up on other positions early and you want to punt on quarterback, you can add a Tyrod Taylor what'd you say? He was going like QB 30 or something.
He's undrafted. I don't know.
Yeah, he's QB nothing. So you just get him for free,
exactly.
and it totally makes sense. And he'll give you something consistently as long as he's a starter on the Chargers.
You're right. And before you jump in, Jay, I talked about the weapons that Drew Lock has. Tyrod Taylor's weapons are pretty nice too. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler, and a nice defense.
That's a good point.
Tyrod has gotten a raw deal at times in his career. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know a lot about Justin Herbert. I haven't heard a lot of buzz about him. I don't know. I think Tyrod has every opportunity to keep him on the bench with effective play that's producing wins. And I think he's more than capable of doing that.
I'll tell you what about Justin Herbert. I would much rather take young Brett Hundley than Justin Herbert.
Oh man, that's scathing.
He means Drew Lock, but that's fine. It's fine. Go ahead and talk about your super exciting boy, Derek Carr.
Well, hey, at least Brett Hundley doesn't carry the 6th overall price tag. Isn't that where Herbert went? Was he 6th overall?
Was it? Yeah,
I think 8th. It might have been 6th, but I believe it was 8th.
Right.
Anywhere in the first round seemed a little too high. But
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this up. I'm going to go with my guy, Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders. God, I'm so glad I got that. Didn't mess that up. Strength. Oh, man, it's already ugly. Strength of schedule for the quarterbacks of the Las Vegas Raiders. Dead last in the NFL. So, good luck, Derek. It's going to be another great year. Their offensive line is ranked 11th, and I'm going to get to more of that later. Right now, he is going undrafted, no surprise, and his projection is QB 28. So there you go. His fantasy finishes in his first 3 seasons.
Consistent.
Yes.
Consistent the last 3 years.
Consistent the last 3 years. 2017, QB 24. 2 years ago, QB 29. Last year, QB 27 in points per game. He did not miss a game. Threw for a little over 3,600 yards with a 71% completion percentage, 20 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, and, added 80 yards on the ground and 2 scores. Some notable stats. He was QB 17 overall, 19th in consistency from weeks 10 to 16, 18th in Foresight consistency, 20th in QB1 consistency, 3rd in completion percentage, huh, guys? No? That doesn't excite you? 9th in completions, 15th in yards per attempt, and 9th in passer rating. Top 10 in completion percentage and passer rating. All right, here we go. However, he was just 38th in intended average air yards, so there is that.
There you go.
He also ranked just 38th in aggressive throw percentage.
Yeah.
But he was 7th in completion percentage above expectations. Of course, when your expectations are rock bottom, it's easy to exceed them. All right, let's move on to some more interesting stats according to Player Profiler. Steve, you'll like this. He was 9th in red zone attempts. Huh? He was 1st in protection rate, which is good.
But yeah, QB 27 in fantasy points per game. Continue.
Okay. He's going to need protection because he has the most difficult strength of schedule is what I was going to say, Ben. Show some respect. He was 7th in true pass. Listen. He was 7th in true passer rating, 2nd in true completion percentage,
I don't trust
3rd
that
in
stat.
accuracy rating, and 10th in adjusted yards per attempt. I don't like you guys.
Yeah.
The Raiders drafted a ton of wide receivers in 2020, starting with Henry Ruggs. Carr is extremely accurate, but just 27th in touchdowns per pass attempt and just 25th in deep ball attempts. Unless Gruden feels that their new wide receivers allow them to open up the playbook vertically, I'm just not excited about Derek Carr in standard quarterback formats.
Who's got more upside this year, Jay? Sorry, Steve. Derek Carr or Drew Lock? Upside. Pure upside.
Dude.
All kidding aside, man. All kidding aside. Who's got more upside in 2020? DC or Drew Lock?
You want me to say Drew Lock, but they're both...
I want you to tell me what you think.
In my opinion, I mean, I know what Derek Carr is. Drew Lock.
Exactly. You know what Derek Carr is.
Well,
you
no,
don't
I know
know.
it's 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and I'm not as down on Derek Carr as most people are, but he and Drew Lock are probably interchangeable, to be honest with you.
I'm sorry, guys. I have to be the judge between you two on this one, and I'm going to step in and slam my gavel. I will say, if you're playing in a league where 1 yard completions and completion percentage matter, Derek Carr is the winner.
Of course. Scott Fishbowl, different format, different world, Derek Carr all day.
Derek Carr is so good at completing 1 yard passes, 1 to 5 yard passes. So that's where the argument rests.
I mean, like I said, I'm trust me. Do I want anything to do with either one of these quarterbacks for any sort of reliance on my fantasy team?
Here we go again.
No,
debating
no.
garbage players.
Well, I'm just saying, Drew. You want to talk about put some respect on somebody's name? Like, put some respect on Drew Lock's situation. If that man is a capable quarterback whatsoever, which we don't know one way or another,
in 5 games.
I'm saying respect his situation, respect the weapons, respect Pat Shurmur as his OC, and respect the fact that he didn't look like a totally incompetent guy in 5 games. Like, if he can actually play football, he is going he's going to have a really nice season.
All right. I feel like we've got a legitimate bona fide bet coming on. Who finishes with a better fantasy season, Drew Lock or Derek Carr?
So I do want to say that my little step in the first time as judge was kind of trying to be funny, but I don't think it actually was that funny. I was trying to allude to the fact that Derek Carr doesn't throw the ball downfield. So his 3rd in the NFL completion percentage, highly aided by the fact he doesn't take risk. But realistically, when you do look at the red zone numbers, guys, Derek Carr across the board was in the top half of the NFL and everything, and which was kind of surprising given they weren't down in the red zone that much. They weren't a high-scoring offense. He did not have weapons. He still, in 2020, won't have the weapons that Drew Lock has. He won't. I mean, you can bring in a rookie, Henry Ruggs III. You can bring in Brian Edwards as a 3rd round, 6'3", big-bodied wide receiver. That still does not equate to an experienced, seasoned, Pro Bowl caliber Cortland Sutton and a Jerry Jeudy, Melvin Gordon, Noah Fant, Philip Lindsay. But Derek Carr isn't as chuddy as
Wait a minute.
If Derek Carr was in Drew Lock's situation, I would be really excited about Derek Carr this season.
There you go. I like that, Benny. That's the best way you could have put that. You're right. Derek Carr, if he was put in that situation, like I'd
Is there really that much difference between Jeudy and Ruggs, and then Fant?
Yes, because Cortland Sutton is the legit number 1.
Okay, that's the
already
difference.
there.
The whole big difference is Cortland Sutton.
Jerry Jeudy is better than Henry Ruggs, number 1, and that's the number 2 receiver in Denver.
And Cortland Sutton's a beast. If you haven't watched him play, I don't know, but I just love the fact we're keeping the Drew Lock and Derek Carr.
Jay, what I said is if Derek Carr is in Drew Lock's situation, I would love Derek Carr this year. I didn't say I love Drew Lock this year. I said that there's potential there. I respect Derek Carr enough to say if he was in the exact same situation as Drew Lock, I'd like him as a streamer option back in QB1.
Now, what would you guys think if Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders?
I mean, thank God for all of us that we'll never have to see that happen. If Kansas City and Pat Mahomes do it right, that dude will only ever wear red and white and always look amazing doing it.
All right, wrap this episode up. Good Lord.
Are you good? You need anything else? You want to talk about how Derek Carr is an MVP?
Next episode, we're coming up with stakes on our
Just
bet.
because you keep making bad bets doesn't mean I'm going to do it too.
Why not? If they're bad bets, jump in.
I mean, every bet we've made so far, I think is a bad bet for you. So I just... It is what it is, man. Like, we got to make these guys are undrafted or going at the end of the draft. Like, I like Tyrod Taylor better than both of them this year. How about that?
All right.
They're all QB2s.
All right. We all 3 get a quarterback. You get Tyrod, Steve gets Drew Lock, and I get Derek Carr. Whoever finishes the season better in fantasy will have to come up with some stakes.
Sure.
Maybe stakes will be the stakes.
That sounds good to me.
I have dibs on DC.
No, what?
Derek Carr.
No, I'm getting Derek. Oh, never mind. Just end the episode. What do we have next?
How many haircuts is Jay going to have next week? I don't know. By the end of the season.
We have got an explosive group of wide receivers and tight ends from the AFC West. Jay and I will be back with you bright and early on Saturday morning to discuss it all with you. Can't wait.
That wraps up this episode of Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. We thank you for joining us. Be sure to visit us, as always, at fantasyforesight.com. Use the links at the bottom of the page to find us across social media, including Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you pod. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.
Saquon and Aaron Jones. Average more than what? Yeah, he did, but Josh Allen finished much better than him in fantasy than Derek Carr maybe ever has. That's just the QB20s for his career. Get out of my life. We don't know that. I hope that dude just comes out and lights it up. I'm not even making bold claims about him. I'm just saying he has a good situation.
Yeah, like I said, he's gonna be on my watch list. I want to see what he does week 1. I mean, I don't have to have the Yahoo watch list to do that, but I'll be watching. 71%. That is what I wrote about on the blog this week. I was like, one of the hardest teams to watch in the entire existence of the NFL was the Broncos last year. Because, man, that was disgusting. Joe Flacco, Brendan Allen, and even Drew Lock in the last 5 games. They might have won 4 of them, but it was still hard to watch.